Big announcement today on the Broko Barchetta. It's out of here. No, not the car, the flappy paddles. Well, you heard right. This, my 1998 F355 Berlinetta F1, is no longer going to be an F1 coming soon. So what I've decided to do is convert this car to a manual gearbox. So today I'm going to go through what exactly is involved in that process. And before you think I'm completely crazy, it's actually a little bit easier than you might think. Because as it turns out, every F355 has a manual gearbox. Even this car has a manual gearbox in there. The only thing is, mine, being an F1, has things on it that give it the ability to shift with flappy paddles and no clutch pedal, which in my weird, strange world is not a good thing. Who knows why, right? But anyway, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to change this car to a manual transmission. And today, I'm going to go over there's really four workflows involved in changing this car over. And so I'll go through each one of those. But before I do though, I wanted to just say thank you to everybody who has subscribed to this channel, because I've only been doing this for a few months and I'm already up to 500, a little over 500 subscribers. So that's good news. Thanks to each and every one of you who is subscribed to this pokey channel that I have going here. So without further ado, I'll go through the four workflows to changing any 355 from an F1 to a manual transmission. Okay, so these four workflows are going to be in no particular order, but I'm going to pretty much start at the front of the car. So the obvious one is, of course, adding a third pedal. So in the case of this car, this is a 1998. It has Bosch ABS, which is a kind of good news, bad news situation when it comes to adding the third pedal. The good news is that the way that they designed it, the way that Ferrari designed it, is that the pedal box is exactly the same for a manual versus the F1. So in other words, things like the slave cylinder is just simply blanked off, so you just have to remove that piece. The bad news is that it requires more work, because you can't just buy a fully assembled manual pedal box and just bolt it in. So that would be a lot easier, but it would also be more expensive, because they run for the earlier model cars that have an ATE system. The pedal box is maybe just a little bit under $4,000. In this case, I can use some bits from a 348 or from a 355 and just rebuild this one. So it's a lot more time, but instead of it being $4,000, it's probably going to be under $1,000 to do that. So that's the first workflow. Okay, and workflow number two probably sounds a little bit obvious, which is to remove the things that make it an F1 box. So you have to remove the flappy paddles themselves. You have to remove the pump, the actuator, and all of the lines that go into the clutch to release the clutch, and then you have to flush the entire system after everything has been plumbed back. In the case of the F1 box, they use something that's very similar to ATF fluid, and in a typical transmission with three pedals and a manual, if it has a slave cylinder like this car has a hydraulic clutch, then it basically just uses your brake fluid, and so this one will plumb into the brake fluid reservoir that's already there. So that's the second one. The third workflow, which also is probably pretty obvious, is to install the gated shifter, all of the shift linkage to go all the way back to the transmission, get it to link up to the transmission, and that is probably the one that has the most parts, although the most complicated one, I would say, is the pedal, just based on the research I've done so far. It includes the most parts. Obviously, you have to buy the shifter, the shift lever, the gate, the shift box, a shifter rod that goes all the way back, and a ton of different nuts and bolts. And I plan to do this with all Ferrari parts. even nuts and bolts, washers, everything is going to be Ferrari. Some of the parts are starting to trickle in even as we speak. But in the world of Ferrari, it's not exactly like ordering a part and getting it later that week. It's like more like weeks, sometimes even months to get it. But the good thing about buying this car when I did, which at first I thought was bad timing, is that actually having received the car just after New Year's, and there was no time to, the weather was not really advantageous to work on the car. It gave me time to think about the situation and say, do I really want to fix this F1 box? And if I don't, now I have plenty of time to get all the parts in. But actually I bought this car not realizing that, really not having made the decision to do a manual conversion. It was in the back of my head, but I really wasn't sure if I would have the guts to do that. But as it turns out, I'm definitely going to do it because I've already committed a whole lot of orders. So, and a fair amount of money so far. So that's the third workflow, and there's one more workflow after that, and that is what I would call electrical. There's a fuse, not a fuse, but a relay that has to be jumped, one of the F1 relays. Most of the electrics is going to remain in the car. So the ECU for the F1 box, a lot of the wires and stuff like that is just going to stay in the car. So as a result, to get the car to start, there's actually a relay that has to be jumped in the passenger footwell. There is a gauge which should be in the center console here, which instead, because this is an F1 car, it has the shift, it tells you what gear you're in. That needs to be replaced by the oil pressure gauge, which is now over here. So that needs to go over here, and then that gauge, where the oil pressure gauge is now, that has to be replaced with an oil temperature gauge. If it wasn't done, the flappy panels are going to have to be removed too. In fact, I'll remove the flappy panels when I do that fourth workflow, because the steering wheel has to come off anyway during that process. So there you have it. That's the plan. So this car is going to be a manual transmission. I already have some of the parts trickling in, including the shift knob and the gated shifter. The shift gate, I should say. And it's going to take a little while for them to roll in. In the meantime, I'm going to still do some more videos. Maybe not even on this car. I still have the Aston Martin, of course, and some more videos coming your way. And hopefully in springtime, I can get moving on this with the weather a little bit warmer and the parts having arrived by then. Cross your fingers, and we'll see how long it takes to accomplish all of this. But thanks for joining, and thank you again for subscribing. 500 plus subscribers isn't bad for a few months, and hopefully well on our way to more than that. So talk to you soon.